Hi everyone and welcome back to Baines Herps. In today's video I'm going to introduce you to a new tool that I've developed, which I hope will be of some use to keepers as a starting point for their research and to reference when setting up for a new species or updating their current animal's care. This tool will be free to use, open access source that can be linked through Facebook groups, forums, websites and more. But first, I'll just give you a little bit of background into the tool and why I decided to develop it. In 2016, the paper you see before you, How Much UVB Does My Reptile Need? The UV tool, was written and published by Dr. Frances Baines and her colleagues at the Reptile and Amphibian Working Group on behalf of the British and Irish Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And if you've not come across this paper before, it's well worth a read. It's full of plenty of interesting information on UVB use in captivity. It's got information on Ferguson zones, different lamp outputs, spectra, as well as the Ferguson zones there. However, the bit that's interested me the most over the years, and that's been most useful to me when I was owning a shop and advising customers, as well as working with zoological collections, is this list at the back. So this list has got hundreds of species on it, from crocodilians to snakes, lizards and even amphibians. And alongside the species, it lists important information such as the Ferguson zones, biomes, temperatures, microhabitats that the animals require in captivity. It's an absolute cornucopia of quality information, and it's all devised by specialists in herpetological welfare to allow improved captive care overall. Whilst assisting zoological collections with their care, I would utilise this paper as a starting point for information before moving on to some more detailed care. However, I found I was constantly flipping through the document, trying to match up microhabitat codes with relevant listings, checking what temperature column I was in, which Ferguson zones meant which UV ranges. So it's not a massive inconvenience, but I'm inherently a lazy person. I'll always find a quick and easy way around something if I can. And in my mind, that quick and easy way was to learn how to code and build macros in VBA and apply it to a new tool. Thankfully, this also coincided with my work, who were putting me through coding courses at the same time. So as I was developing the tool earlier this year, the Federation of British Herpetologists brought out their guidelines on minimum enclosure sizes for reptiles in captivity. Whilst it's been slightly controversial in some camps, this document is the beginning of the hobby self-regulating itself and calling for a set of minimum size enclosures based on species or groups of animals. It's only been released in May of this year. It is an evolving document, and no doubt they'll add new species, they'll change guidelines as and when necessary, and things will improve overall. Within this paper, reptiles have been split down into various groups based on species, for example, agamids and geckos, and then further broken down based on whether terrestrial, arboreal, fossorial, or something else that connects them. Each of these groups has been assigned a size ratio, which is what we use to decide how big their enclosure should be. So I'll stress that again, this is a ratio. It's not a figure in any specific units. So the numbers here are shown are to be multiplied by the snout to vent length the total length or the plastron length, depending on whether it's a reptile, lizard, snake, or a tortoise or turtle. With the release of this information, I decided to incorporate the guidelines into the tool I was creating. That way it'd be a bit more rounded and provide as much information in a single location as possible. So as I mentioned previously, I found having all this information across multiple pages and documents a little bit cumbersome. I wanted to be able to access it all in a single location. And as I was undertaking these courses, decided it'd be a neat little personal project for me to consolidate all of my training. Once I'd built the tool, I realised it may come in handy for a lot of other people. Not everyone's got the time or the interest to trawl through papers. Many keepers like their information in a single place, and without that, they'll just find the information elsewhere. And I'd rather them find it from somewhere credible, like BIAZA or the FBH, rather than go from a random care sheet that's written by somebody who's got second-hand information. So at this point, I contacted both sources in order to get their permission to use the data in the setup. I'm eternally grateful that both the FBH and the BIAZA Reptile and Amphibian working group agreed for me to use the data, provided I wasn't commercialising any of it, which of course I want this to be free and open access so everyone can view it and there'll be no blocks to the information. I'll add just a little disclaimer here that neither the FBH nor the BIAZA working group were involved in the work of the others. So BIAZA weren't involved with FBH, FBH were not involved with BIAZA. So their approval of this document is only based on their individual data. So BIAZA, for example, weren't involved in the creation of the Minimum Enclosure Guidelines, as it's aimed at private keepers and not zoos. And therefore, they don't endorse the recommendations of the sizes, and vice versa. So onto the tool. In the bio of this video, you will see a link to my box.com account, which will allow you to download the file. So simply click download and open it up on your computer. Now, to download it, you're going to need either a laptop or a desktop that can run Microsoft Office Excel. I'm hoping in time I'll be able to get a way for it to be more accessible for everyone, but that's going to take time. I need to learn a few things before I can do that, so I apologise for any inconvenience that causes anyone. Primarily, I use MacBooks, so I'm having to use my son's computer just to do this video. So once you download the file, open it up, and if need be, enable any editing in there. You'll need to edit a couple of squares just to use the tool. And enable the content so that the tool can work. First page you'll see is the disclaimers and instructions for the tool. There aren't many, but they're worth taking a quick look at. So the first disclaimer on the left just states where the information's come from, and that whilst I'll try to keep it updated as well as I can, please only use this as a starting point for reference, and try to absorb information from as many sources as you possibly can. Whilst the document requires download into your desktop, it will not be subject to any updates. So please keep an eye out on my pages for any changes. I'll try to release updates as often as I can. And if you do find any issues or outdated information, my details are on here for you to get in touch and contact me directly. The second disclaimer as I mentioned already, the data is only endorsed by the organisation that wrote it and not by the other organisations included. And the final disclaimer simply states that the enclosure sizes are based upon a single individual of a species in an enclosure. So if you're cohabiting with other species or keeping groups of animals, please do adjust the enclosure sizes accordingly. I believe the FBH may be looking at adding that information in future, so I'll try to update if I can. The information on the right is a set of instructions, so if you get into the tool and you need a reminder of how to use it, just have a look on the front page. But I'll go through that in a moment. The main page you're after is the second tab, Search Species. And in here you'll notice a lot of information. Most of it's just general info that I've pulled from the reference sources. They'll be useful once we've actually searched for something, so just ignore them for now. The most important bits of information on this page are the two white boxes here and here. And the radio buttons, scientific name and common name. And of course the two search buttons. The two white boxes are text boxes. So in the top one, you can type the term that you wish to search for. And the lower box is for if you wish to find out what size enclosure you'll need for your specific individual animal. Whilst the data from the top search field will show you size requirements based on the average sized animal of that species, the lower box will be specific to your animal. So I'd advise that this box is only necessary if you've got a larger than average animal to account for the additional size required. If you've got a smaller than average animal, use the minimum guidelines for the average size instead. That way they're going to have appropriate sized enclosures for thermoregulation and whatnot. So the search function is pretty simple. Let's say we want a bit of information on a bearded dragon. Now if you don't know the scientific name Pogona viticeps, you can search by the common name. So simply select common name on the radio button and then type in bearded as I have there and hit search. And as you see, the tool now brings up all the information from both reference sources, and from here you can view the data and cross-reference it with information laid out on the screen. For example, the Ferguson zones here are 3 to 4, so we can reference that with the Ferguson zone table on the right and see what UVI readings we should be aiming for at the basking zone. Likewise, it shows that our microhabitat is EFG and our biome is 7, 8, 12 and 13. And we can use that with the codes just underneath to find out what biomes and microhabitats they're coming from, which can then go into enclosure design. Underneath there, we'll find the FBH guideline ratios for the chosen species, as well as the average size for that species. Now for lizards, this is the snout to vent length, as shown by this picture here. For snakes, it's the total length. And for tortoises and turtles, it's the plastron length. So we've got the diagrams for snout to vent and total length. Plastron length I will be adding shortly. As you'll see, for a bearded dragon, the average snout to vent length is 25 centimeters, which gives us a minimum enclosure size of either centimeters or feet. So 4.9 feet by 2.5 by 2.5 feet. Slightly bigger than currently recommended, but I know this is something people are pushing for with bearded dragons, so that suits quite nicely. Now if you want a bit more information on a different species, simply hit new search. That'll take us back to our beginning to do another search. Same can be done with scientific name. We can simply search Pogona, and that brings the same information up. If we end up searching for something that's not within that, so Pogona won't be in the common name, the tool asks if you'd like to add a request. I'll talk about this in a moment. I'm just going to hit no. So we'll now take a look at the measurement search function. For this, you need to ensure the species name is in the top text box and the correct radio button is selected. So you can search by scientific name or common name, just make sure the right radio button is selected for the name that you're using. In this box, we can then put the size that our animal is. So your average bearded dragon is 25 centimeters. Let's say ours is, for sake of argument, 28 centimeters snout to vent. When we hit search, it'll bring up a pop-up box. This details the species name, the common name, what group the FBH have put that in, the ratio that it's working at, and our snout to vent length, and then the enclosure size we need for that. So you can see just another 3 centimeters on top of the average, and our enclosure size has significantly increased. That is basically all the information that tool will display for us. I think it's helpful. It certainly helps me out, and I hope everyone else feels it'll help them out. So just a little bit more information as we go along. So the next tab along is references. In here I've just put all the information for the different reference sources I've used. So we've got the tool from Dr. Francis Baines and colleagues, the enclosure size document from the FBH, as well as some others. I've had to fill in a little bit of information on sizes, so I've got that information from various different sources. I'll keep that updated as I go along. Now, with the tool, there are a few limitations. I hope to overcome these in time. Please do bear with me. If anyone else has ideas that they want to throw at me to get these fixed, please do. I want this to be as open to people as possible, so I'm open to information. So first of all, the search function is very literal. It will find and display the first instance of a string anywhere in the text. So for example, if I was to search testudo in the scientific name, it brings up Indotestudo elongata. That's because I comes before T, and the word testudo is included in the search. So if instead we wanted to actually find out about a Hermann's tortoise, we can search testudo H. That's a little bit more specific. So when we hit search, that brings up testudo hermanni. Another limitation that we have is in the data provided. So I've not created any of the data in this tool. Therefore, it is limited to the data brought in from BIAZA and the FBH tools, with, as I've shown, a few other sources used to fill in the blanks. The BIAZA data is extremely in-depth, but no doubt there will be species not listed that you would like to know about. In future iterations, I'm hoping to be able to add a request function. So as we saw before, the tool says, would you like to add a request? If we hit yes, it gives you the option of adding a little bit of information and submitting that. but because of the limitation of having to download the tool, that information will just sit on your computer. It won't come back to me. In time, I hope to get that so that I will receive that information. I can build up a database of species we'd like adding and find, hopefully, a way to do that. Of course, I couldn't possibly keep throwing names at the reptile and amphibian working group. I'm sure they've got more than enough on their plate, so that's literally on the back burner right now. Hopefully in time something will come up as an idea. It's just not happening right now. Likewise, the FBH document is limited. If you find your chosen species doesn't have any details on enclosure size, try to just use a little logic. If there's a species of similar size, lifestyle requirements, use that as a baseline, but double check against other sources. That's all I can say with that one. Unfortunately, there's no amphibian data for enclosure size. As soon as this becomes available, I'll update the tool. I hope it comes soon, but the FBH, again, they're busy people. It's going to take time. If there's anything you spot wrong or wish for a function to be added, please don't hesitate to get in touch and I'll see what I can do. For the future of this tool, I hope that I'll be able to get a few improvements in there. As I say, I'd like to add the option to be able to request species being added. That's going to take some time. I want to move it to a more accessible source so that rather than downloading the tool each time, every time there's a new update, you will be able to use it in a single place. That way, if you request a new species, it's all going to come to me. Likewise, if you don't realise there's an update, having a downloaded version, you might be using old info, whereas if it's in one source, you can go to that and you know it's been updated correctly. Preferably, that will be app or web-based. That's going to take time, effort, and likely some funding. But who knows where the future is going to take this. Hopefully, it becomes a really handy tool for people and we can do something with it. So thank you very much for watching this video. I really do hope this tool will be of use to people. Keeping it open source for anyone to use is my primary target. I think information is here to be shared, not hoarded. So share the link to the tool and this video wherever you're allowed, be it on Facebook, websites. If you own a shop and you want to put it on your website, feel free to put it there. Anything, just get people using it. And if you want anything else added, just message me, just ask. Boonies Herps on Facebook, leave a comment in the post, in the comments down below, or send me an email. My email is on there. And finally, please do like and subscribe to my channel and my Facebook page to keep up to date for any new versions or changes that might come. Thank you very much.